Hello, I'm Ted Dexter. More years ago than some of us would care to recount, Terence Rattigan wrote a film and television script about the close of a famous cricketer's career. The story was called The Final Test, and we have given this film the same title, with the thought that now fiction has become fact. Our hero is John Reid, and when he arrived in England, he had this to say.
Well, I'd like to score a few runs in the test matches, and I think I've only one ambition left in my career in test cricket, and that's to captain a side, a winning side against England.
The result of the New Zealand 1965 series is now history. In paying tribute to a great cricketing personality, let's take a good look back at this strong man, John Reid, at some of the highlights of his captaincy, and of course, at the series. From the moment of his arrival, John Reid, like all visiting Test captains, was the busiest man of the touring party. There are ceremonials to attend, in this case, the laying of the Anzac Day wreath at the cenotaph. There are opening ceremonies to perform, with the inevitable autograph books ever present. There are official luncheons, this one in the City of London. Cocktail parties. And then cricket. The one-day match, which all visiting skippers seem to enjoy, in the delightful surroundings of Arundel against the Duke of Norfolk's 11. Then on to Worcester, and the first of those county matches, meeting old friends and preparing for the test matches. The first test took us all to Birmingham, a city rapidly modernizing itself and reflecting the needs of a nation. In keeping with its parent city, the Edgbaston ground improves its amenities every year, and the latest addition, this fine stand with its central heating, kept some spectators warm. But it was little comfort to the New Zealanders when John Reid and his men took the field, having lost the toss to England skipper Mike Smith. Neither John, nor I, nor any of the players will forget the bitter cold wind and dull light which persisted throughout the match. Bob Barber took first ball, with his Yorkshire partner Jeff Boycott at the other end. They faced the pace attack of Colin, Motts and Cameron, and it was Dick Motts who struck first, getting through Barber's defence when he had made 31. I joined Boycott, and there was a loud appeal as I padded away my first ball. Then runs came steadily, till Jeff went with 23 to his name, and Ken Barrington started his marathon but ill-fated innings. Cameron from the pavilion end. Colin and Motts, sharing the other, made runs hard to come by on this slow wicket. The New Zealanders' fielding was brisk and tidy, and we were picking up runs here and there till I was caught at the wicket after tea. Colin, Qadri and Ken saw the day out, with England's score at 232 for 3. The temperature was down to a raw 46 degrees on the second day, and it was hot drinks, not the traditional lemonade that the fielders wanted. I never thought I'd see a teapot on a test ground. Colin Qadri played fluently, but with a little luck for his 85, while the poor skipper was in and out for that dreaded duck. Jim Parks hit the next 34 off his own bat, but Titmuss, Cartwright and Truman were soon gone. Just when we thought Ken was going to carry his bat, he was caught by Dick behind the wicket for 137. On his way to this score, he had stuck on 85 for over an hour and was dropped for the second test because of it. Rumsey was last out after a classy 21 and first into action with the ball against Graham Dowling. Fred Truman did his best into the wind to Bev Congdon, but it was Fred Titmuss who broke through for England when in his 6th over he beat Congdon in the air, made him push forward and give a catch to Mike Smith at forward short leg. Vice-Captain Dowling went to another beauty from Titmuss, so Sinclair was joined by his captain. John Reid was not in great form, but he seemed to have the measure of the bowling when suddenly one came back at him from Truman and he chopped it into his stumps. Fred's only victim, but the biggest prize of all. The bare facts, J. Reid bowled F. Truman 2. A few minutes later, Reid was back on the field, tending to Bert Sutcliffe, who ducked into one from Fred and had to retire with a split ear. Now the New Zealand innings folded up quickly for only 116, and they were asked to follow on. Despite the injuries, despite the cold wind and poor light, now Reid led the fight back, hitting out at Barber and Titmuss. He was going really well, and it took a spectacular running catch by Barrington in front of the pavilion off Titmuss to get rid of him. Morgan followed his skipper's example with 43. Dick got 42. And Bert Sutcliffe came back to score a gallant 50. But it was young Vic Pollard who earned a pat on the back from his captain, bringing New Zealand's total to 413. How John wished it had been the first innings. When we had booked out of our hotels in the morning, we had reckoned without the fighting qualities of the Kiwis. We had to book in again and get the 95 needed to win the next morning. But Barber and Boycott did the job handsomely. Add an E and an A, and MCC becomes Mecca. And to any cricketer, Lords must surely have that connotation. In the dressing room, with nothing to write home about as yet, Reid probably recalled his tour of 1949, when, just 21 years old, he had scored almost 1,500 runs at an average of 41, and in 2 tests dropped hints at the power that would become his. Winning the toss this time, his hopes were high as the English team took the field. They were soon dashed, for as play started, Rumsey swung a beauty into Bev Congdon and had him plumb in front. Back in the dressing room, Reid, who had been quietly working away at one of the skipper's inevitable chores, had to drop everything and pad up. It's a long walk from the dressing room at Lord's, and as in the very next over, Sinclair had his off stump removed by Rumsey, John Reid was soon on his way, knowing that the team he was leading was struggling for survival, and that survival rested largely on his own broad shoulders. John Reid was once described as one of the greatest unorthodox cricketers the world has seen. Dedicated. All hair and teeth, as one of his teammates humorously described him. He has served his country to the full, as cover point, wicket-keeper and bowler. But his greatest service to the game has been as a batsman, with his tremendously powerful strokes. For an hour or more, he was content to just defend against the 2 Freds, Rumsey and Truman. At one time I relieved the latter, to my cost. During his innings, Dowling and Morgan had in turn deprived him of their company, and soon Reid followed them back to the pavilion with that flat feeling we all experience from time to time, and with only the hope of his second innings to sustain him. For now the rot was really setting in. Dick was to get a nasty Yorker just before lunch, and the players came in with the score standing at 62 for 6. Almost total collapse, but not quite. During the afternoon, happily for Reid, two of the youngest members of the side set about putting the New Zealand house in order, and one of them, that Vic Pollard again. Batting manfully on against the various English bowlers, they both collected their respective 50s, until Freddie Titmus dispatched Pollard with a splendid catch. We mopped up the tail with no particular trouble for once, and their final score read just 175. As he led his team onto the field towards the end of the afternoon, John Reid looked at the light. A comment, perhaps? Or a thought of tactics? And if the latter, who could blame him? But before the first day was over, he took fresh heart, as the combination of Motts and Dick got rid of Boycott and Barber for him. Collins was looking a bit lively when I was joined at the wicket by Colin Qadri. According to one authoritative writer, Dexter enriched the scene with occasional strokes of primeval violence. Well, for my part, I would commend the batting of Colin Qadri. Colin batted throughout his long stay with the burden of an ever more painful back, but fought on against the unwearying efforts of the New Zealand bowlers and some extremely zestful fielding. Despite his indisposition, Colin gave a delighted crowd his 100, in his own apparently effortless way. With England all out for 307, the New Zealand batsman rose to the traditional Saturday occasion at Lord's, in front of a crowd of 20,000, and the sun shone at last. As in their second innings at Edgbaston, almost everyone contributed, and for a time John Reid was content to play second string to Sinclair, who was in great form. When the latter reached his 50, with a superb off-drive, the crowd and Reid gave him a typical salute. John Reid's form still evaded him, though for a while he persevered, even showed us some of those splendid strokes that reminded us of his powers over the years. The thought that John was settling down delighted us all. We hoped he would achieve, even to our own cost, that century that would have been so fitting for his last test at Lord's. Then, just as we thought that his mastery had returned, the crowd, all of us, found ourselves applauding his final return to this great pavilion. Is it a long walk? Or does it seem too short when you are making it for the last time in your test career? Certainly it must have been filled with emotion for John as he passed in front of a crowded tavern, which in its turn must soon be lost to progress and the demand of time. As John disappeared from sight, our eyes followed him into the pavilion, and few gave a thought for the score he had left under his number on the board, a mere 22. On the Monday, the weather and the crowd were in some contrast to the Saturday, but for a few moments John put thoughts of cricket to one side, as one by one he presented his youthful team on the occasion of the annual royal visit. Her Majesty was accompanied by Prince Philip, who, it should be noted, had donned his Lord's Taverner's tie. The next day, the last day, with England needing 152 runs to win, the New Zealand skipper contemplated the drizzle and the light. Then a captain's inspection, and, naturally enough, disagreement. With the minutes ticking away, the chance of a draw became a real possibility in John's mind, and as we looked at the light, we almost agreed with him. But play was ordained at 2:45. 170 minutes left, which meant we had to hurry. Any appeal against the light would surely have been sustained, but none was made, and the game went on, even through the occasional drizzle. The New Zealanders bowled tight and fielded hard, determined to fight to the very end. Then, when any thought of an honourable draw had been dispelled, I found myself facing John Reid as he bowled the last ball of the game. The series had been won. We were home, if not exactly in the dry. A few days after winning the series, a funny thing happened to me on the way between test matches. Happenstance decreed that I should take no further part in the series. But television cameramen and cameras, tailored for English cricket weather, took me in spirit at least to Headingley, where a change of cast, as it were, had brought John Edrich into the side. Ken Barrington was back too, and joined in a quick scoring partnership which took Ken to 163 and John to 200 and then 300, the 9th in Test history. His score was standing at 310 not out, and when Mike Smith declared at 546 for the loss of only 4 wickets, it was virtually time for us to say our farewells to the gallant men who had struggled against England. Bert Sutcliffe, the old man of the party, with a love of English fish and chips. Dick Motts, the hardest working bowler and the most successful. Colin, one of the youngsters who looked so promising and troubled the best with his fast left-arm bowling. Then Cameron, who seldom bowled a bad ball all summer. And Taylor, who fought his way into the Test side and proved an able deputy for Cameron. Artie Dick, who kept so well in the first 2 tests, and Ward, the first keeper, who was fit again for the last, they both maintained a high standard behind the stumps. Morgan, perhaps the most stylish of the batsmen. Brian Ewell, the slow left-armer, who was unlucky enough to run into Edrich in form in his 1 test match. Now Vic Pollard, the find of the series, perhaps the young Dennis Compton of New Zealand, a mature batsman already and only in his teens. Graham Dowling, the vice-captain, and John Reid's right-hand man, who played so well at Lord's. Bev Congdon, who opened with Dowling, but never quite sustained the promise of his 100 against MCC. And lastly, Barry Sinclair. So, to the New Zealand captain. For now, his moment had come. John Reid, commander against England in 10 tests, over 3 series, walked out onto the Headingley turf for his final innings. And I think we were all secretly hoping that the finest all-round cricketer yet produced by his country might have a shining hour in the sun. He took his guard and looked about with that characteristic glance we have come to know so well. It's not a belligerent look. It's a friendly look that seems to say, well, there you all are, and here I am, so let's play cricket. Five runs later, he faced Rumsey again. Barrington, waiting in the slips, took the catch. And soon, New Zealand, reeling from the collapse of 4 wickets, taken in 1 over by Freddie Titmuss, would lose by an innings and 187 runs. But at this moment, our hearts saluted John Reid in this his final test, as he walked from his crease back to the pavilion, and in so doing, strode into the pages of cricket's history.